Listen up, folks. On this episode of Impact Theory, we got Vivek Ramaswamy in the house. Now, this dude ain't just any entrepreneur. He's also been in the political ring, gunning for that Republican Party nomination in the 2024 presidential election. But hold up, he's not just about politics. He's also speaking out against what he sees as abuse in the justice system. They're touching on some heavy topics, from concerns about where society's headed to the influence of media institutions. They're talking about the importance of free speech, building a culture focused on performance, and questioning what it means to be American in today's world. Vivek's got some big ideas for rebuilding media institutions like BuzzFeed, and he's not shy about sharing his vision for improving our election processes and restoring national unity. So if you want to dive deep into all of this, hit up the link in the description below for the full context.
You asked me when we went off track of who we were the first time around, what made America great the first time? What made America great the first time is embracing the spirit that we as a people are free, that you're not riding some tectonic plate of group identity, but that you are endowed by your creator with your own free will to achieve anything you want in your life with your own agency and hard work and dedication. Okay, maybe not anything you want in your life because every one of us has different God-given gifts, but at least that you get to maximize your God-given gifts, even if they're different than my God-given gift or anybody else's God-given gift in this room. Each of them is different. But we live in a country where you can achieve the maximum of that God-given potential without any government standing in your way, even if that means that that government isn't exactly the party that lifts you up to achieve it either. Is there any such thing as a perfect state of the world when that world is comprised of fallen human beings like us? No, I don't think that there is such a thing as a state of perfection on this earth. But the idea that a government striving to create that through coercion is going to create a better society as a result, I think has been a concept that we've disproven time and again over the course of history. And that doesn't mean that we should be callous or have disregard to people who struggle. To the contrary, I think what we've done with the overgrowth of a federal nanny state is we have crowded out the fellow instincts of empathy and compassion and respect and dignity that we confer to one another through other modes of community, through family, through local networks, that we've in some ways lost and degraded in the context of a government that has played that role instead.
If you had a generation of youth, what values would you point them at such that you don't have to rule by fiat from the top down, that it will actually grow up from the bottom?
So I think the beauty of the American founding, and this goes to the answer to your question, is that there's a tension in there, because I'm going to point you to two values that in principle are in tension with one another, but actually that tension is a beautiful thing. On one hand, it is that you are an individual with total agency and free will to determine what you make of your life. The number one person who's in power to determine what you achieve in your life is you. I don't think that should be a controversial thing to say. I think that is—
It's extremely controversial.
I don't think it should be controversial, right?
I'm with you on that.
So, in fact, I think delivering any message other than this to a child who is understanding their own agency, I think is actually morally wrong. I think it is a form of psychological slavery to tell a kid that what you're able to achieve in your life, that there is someone else other than you who's the biggest determinant of that. That's what we teach kids today. But my number one message, you're talking about teaching the kids of the next generation, the simplest principle without any fancy language attached to it is the number one person who determines what you will achieve in your life is you. Period. It's not a government. It's not somebody else's invisible power that they're exercising over you. I'm not saying that those things don't exist. But the number one, if you're going to rank order the 1,000 factors that are going to determine what you achieve in your life, unambiguously for every one of you, the number one determinant of what you achieve will be you and your own actions and your own choices that you make. The second principle, I told you there's two, and they go together, is that as you do it, you are still in a relationship with your fellow citizens. I'm going to talk about this at a national level because you asked about it in the context of a nation, so I'll answer at a national level. You're in a relationship with your citizens, with your fellow citizens, that is co-equal at its core. that you may go on to achieve more or less than your neighbor as measured by the numbers of green pieces of paper or the size of your house or the level of acclaim that you get in the modern world, the number of social media followers you have, whatever the artifice of the generation may be. Regardless of the green pieces of paper or equivalent social media followers or whatever metric you care about, regardless of the material differences between you and your neighbor, you are still fundamentally in a relationship with each other as co-equal citizens. You are equal at your core in the way that matters. You're equal in your moral worth, and that you have a civic duty, a duty to each of your fellow citizens that they have back to you, regardless of what each of you go on and achieve.
And if you're always looking at life through the lens of solutions, like, oh, I can do a different thing and get a different thing, you can remain in control of your life. So for me, the reason that the idea of self-determination should be the thing that you are embracing with every fiber of your being, the reason I think that that's effective is it puts you in the driver's seat. Now, the bad news is there are going to be wildly divergent outcomes. Different people are better at different things. And if you lack in some area, you just may never be successful. But what I want to understand is, at this moment in time, I would say that the vision for I should be taken care of. What are you talking about? Like, we need to redistribute wealth. Like, this is grotesque that some people can get so rich and other people are literally going to die in the streets. Here are these two rich people talking about how other people like need to remember that they can have self-determination. Self-determination, like everything in the world is messed up. I can't afford a house. I'm in crippling debt from my student loans and I can't discharge it. And when Joe Biden tries to pay it off, you guys stop him at every turn. Like, it's just the whole world is fucked and you're telling me to go make something of myself. That message has captivated not one, not two. We're talking 3, maybe 4 generations of people.
Of the thousands of factors that will determine what you are able to achieve for yourself in your life, the number one most important factor is you. And I think if we acknowledge that truth, I don't like to peddle fake optimism. I don't like to peddle fake self-help doctrines just for the sake of you believing that's going to make you better off. It's also got to be grounded in truth, right? And so is it true that if you deliver that message to people, you said you find this compelling, and I don't disagree with you that it's going to motivate them to do more. Great. It could do that, but I don't believe in perpetuating that message just because it's going to have a positive effect. It also has to be true. So do I think it is true that you are the only person who has any say in what you achieve in life and that you can achieve anything you want with your own hard work and dedication? No, I don't think that's true. Might that be a motivating message? It could be a motivating message for the time being, but it's going to be short-term motivating because pretty soon you're going to run into obstacles in your life that teach you that that's just not true. I'm 6 feet tall. Now, I guess there's some people who are 6 feet tall make it to the NBA, but I also don't have a lot of other skill sets required to compete at the highest level of basketball that no matter how much I worked, it was never going to happen for basketball or even for tennis or any other sport. Well, each of us has different God-given gifts. And that's just a fact. And no matter how hard I worked or how dedicated I was, that wasn't going to happen. There are other people who inherit genetic diseases or diseases of other kinds that that through no fault of their own will limit how long or how comfortably they're able to live their life. That's just not in your control. But here's what I will say is each of us has our own unique God-given talents. And nobody can stop you from achieving the maximum of your God-given potential, or at least you are the person who has the most agency over that. And I actually think that with that modification, I find that to be a more inspiring message because that's actually true. I think when you think about it, it's incontrovertible. What other factor is going to be more influential on that than you, especially at the level of a population? There isn't one more than that. So now we're talking about that being true. Why do people find that inspiring? It's because it's true, actually. Objectives. Now, so many people may not know this, but your own money is invested probably in things like index funds in your 401k account or your investment account. And it turns out as a shareholder, you do have agency in companies. You have the ability to vote your shares, to tell the management of that company that's using your own money how they're paid, how you want them to behave. Is it for the pursuit of maximizing the value of the company, or is it to advance some other separate agenda? But what most people don't know is that vote is cast by large financial institutions like BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street and Invesco and others that for years have been voting your own shares in favor of ideological goals that many Americans don't agree with, but maybe even more importantly, do not have anything to do with advancing your best financial interests, like voting for racial equity audits at Apple or emissions cap programs at Chevron that have nothing to do with their business interests, but they're using your money to advance those values when you may not even agree with those values on this issue. Let's do it the way Puerto Rico does in the rest of the United States. And by the way, I think our friends in Puerto Rico would appreciate saying it this way. Single day voting on election day as a national holiday with paper ballots, government issued ID to match the voter file. And I would go so far as to say English is the sole language that appears on a ballot. But even if you take that last one off, do the other 5 things. If we get to that place as a country, then we, and hopefully all parties, but the Republican Party included, are done, fully done, complaining about election security or contested election results. We're done. We're moving forward as a country. That's a commitment we're all making to each other. Is it controversial to have single day voting on election day as a national holiday with paper ballots and government issued ID? I don't think it should be controversial. I think most people on the left, if you ask them on a given day, is that a reasonable way to conduct elections? They'd say yes, for the same reason Puerto Rico actually does it that way today as part of the U.S. system. I think that's the stuff of uniting a country, which is on one hand, delivering substance that everybody on first principles should agree with, yet on the back of that, making a commitment to say that I don't care what the other side is going to do. My side isn't going to complain about those results going forward. I think it's a great way to go.
Check it out, y'all. This week on Candace Owens' show, she's coming through with some real talk. Candace ain't holding back. She's speaking her mind on all the latest hot topics, straight up. From politics to culture, she's dropping knowledge and keeping it 100. So if you want to hear what Candace Owens has to say, hit up the link in the description below for the full context.
So obviously we have to address the elephant in the room. It would be so inauthentic. It would be so not Candace if we did not address the elephant in the room. The answer is yes. President Joe Biden did in fact poop his pants in France the other day. Everyone knows he pooped his pants. You know he pooped his pants. I know he pooped his pants. But especially us moms to toddlers, we know what went down. It was an unmistakable, undeniable squat. And I think the most telling part was Joe Biden's face. Jill Biden looked over at her toddler and she just looked like a disappointed mommy. She gave you have got to be kidding me here, now. Didn't I tell you to go to the bathroom before we got into the car? Well, you guys, Rachel Maddow believes that Trump, if he's elected, is going to start rounding up people on the left and putting them in concentration camps. And of the everything is and everyone can be related to Hitler and the Nazis and camps. Can we stop that? Resident Senior Joe Biden, and he wants you guys to know that your guns are not going to stand a chance in keeping you and your family safe from the government. He says you're going to need fighter jets if it comes down to it. That makes me feel good.
By the way, if they want to think to take on government, if we get out of line, which they're talking again about, well, guess what? They need F-15s. They don't need a rifle.
Did the president just say what I think he said? Is he like, ha ha, your guns aren't going to be any good if you think you're going to take on the government? People actually laugh at that in the audience? Were they all members of the government? Did they laugh at the idea that you're going to need instead an F-15, a fighter jet, if you think you're going to take us on? I'm sorry, were we just talking about Rachel Maddow concerned about Trump becoming a dictator? Because that seems pretty scary. Actually, I got to give him credit, though. He's incredibly honest there. He's basically saying our guns are bigger than yours. And if you get out of line, Americans, I don't know, what do fighter jets do? Implying that they would just bomb us all out of oblivion if we didn't comply with them. I think he could be. And I, again, think it's strange that people are laughing. But I appreciate the honesty. This is what I actually appreciate about the fact that he's kind of going in and out of his dementia at times, because you do get these moments where he's just being really honest. And he's honestly telling you that as the government, we will just up the violence if you don't listen to us. Now let's cut to the Diddy lawsuit of today. Now, we shouldn't forget that before there ever was a Diddy lawsuit, or at least maybe before that lawsuit was even being prepared, Ye, the artist formerly known as Kanye West, notoriously accused Diddy of being a fed.
But as far as Meek Mills, Puff Daddy, whoever, none of these all you fake hard you. Hold on. Okay. All you fake hard you. You know what I'm saying? I don't give because you can't shoot nobody anyway. And the reason why you got to talk is because you did a deal, you fed. You know what I'm saying? That's why you got to come at me, because part of the deal for you to be able to do all that and get out of jail is that you promise that you're going to go pull my co-car. So y'all shut the up about me. Now let me say it calm. You shut the up about Michael.
So let me slow down there what he's saying so you can understand it. He is alleging that Diddy is a Fed. And the reason why Diddy, or how he became a Fed, was that at some point he was in prison and he did a deal in which, in order for him to be let out, he had to pull the coattails of other artists, help them control other artists within Hollywood. And of course, at that time, when Ye was speaking, that was when all the fire was going on in 2022. He was being labeled an anti-Semite. He was being canceled. Adidas dropped him. Gap dropped him. People didn't actually think about what he was saying there. It was just dismissed until, of course, Cassie began speaking out. That's Diddy's former girlfriend. And it sounded like Diddy was involved in a lot of darkness. And then you had suddenly this producer dropping a lawsuit and saying, yeah, people at the LAPD clean up for Diddy when he allegedly is murdering people. It's just he's allowed to do these sorts of things. Joe Mazzulla, I don't know if you've been following him. If you're not a sports person, he is the coach of the Celtics. Very young, by the way. He's 35 years young. And he does not seem to be bucking to media black magic. Take a listen to what he said when reporters tried to race bait him.
Hey, Joe, Vince Goodwill, Yahoo Sports. For the first time since 1975, this is the NBA Finals where you have two black head coaches. Given the plight sometimes of black head coaches in the NBA, do you think this is a significant moment? Do you take pride in this? How do you view this, or do you not see it at all?
I wonder how many of those have been Christian coaches.
Never heard it. They've never heard somebody throw that at them in a press conference, probably ever. We love to see it. And not only that, Amber Rose, who I have had a lot of things to say about in the past, you know, she was one of the people that heavily marketed the quote unquote slut walk many years ago. I think it was back in 2018. Well, she's coming around the bend too. She's mixed race, to be clear. And she's come out and endorsed Donald Trump. And of course, the demonic media has hunted her down, followed her and said, how could you? How could you do that, Amber Rose? You are a woman. Here's what Amber Rose has to say.
A lot of people were shocked with your, endorsement of Donald Trump. I mean, you're all about women's rights issues. I mean, what was the reason for the big change?
Is Donald Trump not for women's rights issues?
I mean, I guess a lot of people were asking.
He's trying to make America great again. That's for women too, right?
That's true. I mean,
there you go.
A lot of celebrities are kind of like voting for Trump now. I mean, why do you think people are kind of like changing their way of like?
I think we just did our research and we're just, we're not brainwashed anymore by the left. I can say that about myself. All these years I've been brainwashed and I'm not anymore.
On this episode of Tucker Carlson, we've got Steven Bannon in the house. He's the former White House chief strategist and senior counselor to President Donald Trump. Now he's hosting the War Room podcast where he's dropping knowledge bombs left and right. Bannon's bringing that same energy to Tucker's show, talking about the real deal in politics and beyond. So if you want to hear what Bannon's got to say, hit up the link in the description below for the full context.
You hear a lot from the people who run Washington about the rule of law and its importance, but of course, the law unevenly applied is not justice, it's by definition tyranny. So with that in mind, the following. Back in 2012, 12 years ago, U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder was held in contempt of Congress after refusing to provide Justice Department documents detailing the Obama administration's handling of the Fast and Furious scandal. You may remember all of this. So that happened. Holder cited executive privilege, as many have before, to justify withholding these communications, protecting them, because they were executive branch communications. For that, he was held in criminal contempt, but it was meaningless. Nothing ever happened to Eric Holder. In fact, he became even more popular in Washington. His cocktail schedule was not interrupted even for a day. The U.S. attorney in D.C. cited the country's longstanding practice of not enforcing contempt charges to let Holder off scot-free because, again, he invoked executive privilege, and that's a constitutionally murky area. No one has ever been prosecuted for it. Of course, the Justice Department, which Holder led, refused to prosecute him, and then Barack Obama invoked executive privilege to protect him as well. So that's what happened then. So fast forward 11 years, and Steve Bannon tried roughly the same thing. Bannon, of course, was President Trump's former chief political strategist, and he was ordered, after he tried it, to report to prison by a federal judge. In fact, he's going at the beginning of next month. He was convicted on 2 counts of contempt. Why? Because he did what Eric Holder did and defied a congressional subpoena from a committee, in this case, the January 6th committee, and he did what Holder did. He invoked executive privilege. But it didn't work because he is not Eric Holder.
He is a Republican affiliated with Donald Trump.
In my 20s, I spent, almost 4 years on a Navy destroyer in the North Arabian Sea, Persian Gulf, Western Pacific, South China Sea. So in my 20s, I served my country on a Navy destroyer. In my 70s, I'll serve my country in a federal prison. It doesn't make any difference. It won't change my life one whit. I don't have a big social agenda. I'm dedicated to this work of saving my country. And if I have to be a political prisoner, remember, this is a misdemeanor. When we were in the federal courthouse, the guy that ran the federal courthouse said, and this is in D.C., he said, and I think he'd been there 30 or 40 years. He told one of my guys he had never remembered a misdemeanor ever being prosecuted. He says they're so backed up with felonies, and that's why half the three-quarters of felonies get settled out of court. They just don't, there's no time. He said he's never seen a misdemeanor ever gone to trial. Particularly immediately. They remember this is a criminal charge, not civil. You could charge somebody civilly. And like in Peter Navarro, my colleague and brother, he's down in a federal prison in Miami. I don't know if they've ever had a misdemeanor someone there. And Peter's the same way. We're being oppressed by an illegitimate regime that usurp power here. And that's what we have to break. And look, I don't need to tell you, they're on you every day, as you know. They're on everybody that stands up. That's what they've tried to do. This illegitimate regime is trying to persecute not just President Trump. They're going to send him to prison on July 11th. They may defer that, but they're going to give him a prison sentence, as they've given Rudy Giuliani, either bankruptcy or deplatforming or taking your law license away or putting people in prison. That's what they're doing. And we have to stand up to it. That's about, when these people get back in power, they're going to come after us. You're damn right we're going to come after you within the rule of law, because that's how we'll bequeath a constitutional republic to our children and grandchildren. But the only thing these people understand is smash mouth. Now, you have to play within the rules. You have to play within the Constitution and the rule of law. But we can do a lot within that. And that's why I think McCabe and these guys, Brennan, McCabe, Clapper, they're so absolutely worried, because they understand we know the game. President Trump knows the game much better today. And there's going to be real accountability come 20 November of next year. I understand what's going on here, as you do. I mean, this is an illegitimate regime of neo-Marxists. From the Justice Department to the FBI, the Wall Street crowd, you can see this everywhere in our society, the attacks on the family, and they play for keeps. And I'm so glad that in the Alex Joneses and the Tucker Carlsons, and particularly since you've had the opportunity to leave Fox, ourselves and so many others now understand that this is a war to the knife, right? We have to win this. If we don't win this, this country is going to devolve into some kind of neo-Marxist totalitarian regime, of which it's pretty far down the road right now. That's why I don't fear going to prison, right? I know it's going to take my voice off. The war is still going to go on. And I keep saying it's next man up. You can't lean on Trump. You can't lean on Tucker. You can't lean on Bannon. You can't lean on Alex Jones. This is a populist revolt. You have to step up and do it yourself. You have to dive in more. You have to do more media sharing, become a force multiplier. So
if you just take 3 steps back, the fact that they're putting people in prison, men in their 70s, you and Navarro, but others, lots of others, people in prison for defying them politically. I mean, that is not the country that we grew up in. Do you ever sort of wonder where you are?
Like you, I've seen this coming for a couple of years. Yeah. I was able to work with Andrew Breitbart when you started Daily Caller, Andrew started Breitbart. I think at the time we had an inkling when Obama said fundamentally transform the United States. I think we had an inkling with Holder and these guys. It took really President Trump as kind of someone that people that could rally around to understand that the managed decline of our country was more than just happy, more than just a campaign slogan. It's real. And I think that's, I keep saying Trump's win in 2016 was providential, because I was there. We had a man, we had a mission, we had a plane, we had a message. We didn't have much. We didn't have a lot of money and not a lot of organization. And that was divine providence we won. But I tell people it's also divine providence. It's providential that we lost in 20 that was stolen. Up until then, you kind of thought Democrats, and they had different ideas on taxes. They had different ideas maybe on certain social programs or education programs, but it's not true. They are literally a neo-Marxist revolutionary group that wants to fundamentally change this country. And now that they have the power of big tech, the lords of easy money, Hollywood, the universities, both high culture and low culture, in the political apparatus, they're going to destroy the American Republic. Judgment Day is 5 November, and Accountability Day is after President Trump takes his hand off the King James Bible at high noon on the 20th of January, 2025. McCabe's on TV every other night. McComey's on TV all the time. This is so terrible. We're having conversations. We may have to leave the country. Well, hey, leave the country, but we have extradition treaties with everybody, and the long arm of American justice is going to get you and fetch you back here. Because one thing I can tell you, with President Trump's second term, there is going to be accountability, not retribution, not revenge. He's got the border to shut down, mass deportations. He's got to stop these endless wars, particularly in the Ukraine. He's got to stop the madness of the spending and how we finance this government, which is out of control and caused inflation. Right. One of the most important things he has to do is deconstruct the administrative state. And part of that is literally crushing the new Praetorian Guard, which is the deep state. They can come for anybody. You don't think they can put anybody in prison? If you see what's happening in New York State and California and some of these states and cities, the great cities like Chicago, with what they have running those cities, the folks they got running it, you better be prepared. There's going to be a lot more people than Donald Trump and Steve Bannon go to prison.
Check it out. On this episode of Russell Brand's show, they're getting into the nitty-gritty of the bird flu outbreak. They're asking the real questions like, is this going to be the next big pandemic? And what's the deal with the vaccines? They're diving deep into the facts and theories, trying to figure out what's really going on behind the scenes. So if you're curious about the bird flu and what it could mean for the future, hit up the link in the description below for the full context.
Here we go. It's bird flu time now. Be afraid, be very afraid. Sweet Lady Freedom is about to depart. Let's get the World Health Organization involved, because they've done such a sterling job of handling freedom, with their treaties that demand censorship, what with their medicines that seem to demand myocarditis. In some cases, very rare though. Very rare, very rare. Let's see what they're saying. A new strain of bird flu has jumped. It's jumped to humans in an event that has potential for high public health impact, says the World Health Organization. You can almost hear them celebrating. We're relevant again. We're relevant again. Fantastic. We can start imposing some measures. Officials say a 59-year-old man died in Mexico, and now it's your fucking problem. Battling a 7-day illness in which he suffered fever, shortness of breath, diarrhea, and nausea. Tests showed the man who suffered multiple underlying conditions. I've heard this before somewhere, was infected with a strain of bird flu called H5N2. What's next? Where did they make that strain? If I find out that Anthony Fauci, the Eco Health Alliance, invested in H5N2, we've never heard of it before. Right, tomorrow you'll see Fauci on the TV saying that this doesn't exist. Then a couple of days, or they've never been involved with it. Officials said any new case of bird flu strain spilling into humans risked an outbreak. Of course it does. It's terribly, terribly risky. The WHO is running a scam on bird flu. That Mexican man, God rest his eternal soul, died on the April the 24th. He was in hospital for 3 weeks, bedridden for other reasons. He likely died of those causes, not bird flu. It's happening again. They used a PCR test, which have been widely criticised, so sensitive that they result in many false positives. So they can now claim in headlines he died with bird flu, even though he probably didn't. Dying with bird flu, false positives, PCR test is different from dying from bird flu. Are we really going to have this conversation from and with all over again? Any actual pandemic is terrifying, along with war and other environmental things that could be used to lock us in our homes and curtail our freedom. These things we should be very alert to them. Like you, I've noticed that every single crisis we encounter appears to be utilized to exploit us.
Now to the growing concerns over the spread of bird flu. A third human case has now been reported in the U.S., another farm worker in Michigan. While officials say the risk to the general public remains low, work on vaccines is already underway.
It's like 5 seconds. The risk is low. Everyone's going to take this thing that Johnson & Johnson have brewed up in the lab. Moderna are working on it, along with their 25th booster shot for COVID. Pfizer are working on something, and in 75 years, they'll tell you what's wrong with it.
Tonight, scientists are ramping up vaccine testing to prevent bird flu transmission between cows and people, as the CDC confirms a third rare human case in the U.S. A cow likely infecting a Michigan dairy worker, now the first to show respiratory symptoms like coughing.
This Michigan dairy worker, I mean, we didn't know what happened in Wuhan exactly. You know, we were never clear. Here we've got this Michigan dairy worker. We never found out, did we, about the fella in the Wuhan Institute of Virology? Did we ever track down that individual or the person in the wet market? But now it's this Michigan farmer. I mean, there's so many questions here. Sure.
Now the first to show respiratory symptoms like coughing. That patient now on an antiviral medication and recovering at home. The previous 2 cases showed symptoms like pink eye. Federal health authorities investing.
Never been happy about pink eye as a thing. I don't like the underlying. The idea behind pink eye is you've touched your arse and then you've touched your eye. It's ass to eye action and it's got to stop.
Millions to limit the spread among livestock. The USDA announcing an addition.
Limit the spread. Oh no, flatten the curve. Get in your house. It's any minute now. Any minute now.
USDA announcing an additional $800 million in emergency aid for testing, virus surveillance, developing bird flu vaccine for.
Oh, right, they've already got aid. That's your money. They've already, look, it's only one man's died in Mexico. There's $800 million. Now, what was the news? Oh, he died with something. He's been in hospital for 3 weeks. Look, $800 million in emergency aid for testing, virus surveillance, developing bird flu, vaccine for livestock. They're so quick to start regulating and profiting from this stuff. Give us a minute. Give us a minute to get frightened. Right, they're controlling the cattle's movement. That in it, right? Those cows have got to live in 15-minute cow cities now and stand 6 feet away. The number just appeared from other cows. They're going to wear these cow masks.
Confirming 68 outbreaks in dairy cow herds across at least 9 states since March. The USDA says ultimately we want to eliminate the virus, and developing a vaccine to prevent another emergence of H5N1 in cattle will be an important step toward that end.
Can you tell me, anywhere in America or across the world right now, are there experiments going on where you are engineering, metastasizing, or otherwise adapting and making worse bird flu? We are doing that. Who's paying for that? Taxpayers. What the hell would happen if this bird flu was a lot worse? Can we attach it to pink eye in some sort of way? How about then we can touch each other's butts, then we touch each other's eyes, and then we get about $800 million. I love being in business with you. You're a genius, Mr. Fauci. Don't shake my hand! There's a pandemic on, you maniac bastard! I am the science!
That step in humans is likely still far off.
Ultimately, if we reduce the virus amounts in livestock, it's going to reduce the chance that this virus has for jumping into humans.
Whit, there is no science to suggest that bird flu is being transmitted from human to human. Scientists are still testing vaccines.
There is no science. Well, shut up then. Get off the news. Stop it. Here's some science. Stop doing those mad, wacky experiments where you make viruses much worse. Stop dual-purpose research. Stop funding weird shit in Ukrainian biolabs and Chinese biolabs with people's money. Then telling ordinary people that they're the problem, that they're disgusting, that no one's allowed any political autonomy. Stop the madness. Deborah Burke says that we must test every cow in America on a weekly basis.
We're not testing to really see how many people have been exposed and got asymptomatically infected.
Oh my God, they're doing asymptomatic again. Asymptomatic spread. I remember that one. Just because you feel fine and you've never felt better, that doesn't mean you're not on the very edge of death. Now get in your house and shut your mouth.
We should be testing every cow weekly. You can do pooled PCR.
No problem. PCR test. There's not a massive conversation about the efficacy of PCR and the number of rotations or whatever that thing was, whether or not they worked, or the person that invented PCR test saying, excuse me, that's not what I intended these for. They're ignoring the evidence. They're ignoring the evidence and telling you that it's science.
We have the technology. The great thing about America is we're incredibly innovative, and we have the ability to have these breakthroughs. We could be pool testing every dairy worker.
Oh my God, why do they want to keep testing everybody all the time? The only thing that's not being tested is the efficacy of our democracy, the relationships between Big Pharma and Congress, the inability of ordinary people to run their own lives without being cast into corners of dread and terror at every possible opportunity. People being shamed because they were cynical about a medical product that doesn't even warrant the use of the name vaccine, when a couple of weeks later, someone coughs in bloody Cancun. Now we've all got to stay in our houses for another 6 months.
Undetected cases in humans, because we're once again only tracking people with symptoms. When we did that with COVID, the virus spread throughout the Northeast undetected because it took a long time. time to get to the vulnerable individuals. But in the meantime, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people were infected with asymptomatic or mild disease and never came to medical.
I've got an asymptomatic or mild disease. Lock everyone in the house. For God's sake, I'm feeling mildly unwell. Give Albert Bourla $1 billion now and give the WHO the authority to shut down all our lives. Massey, have you seen him on Tucker yet? Pretty good conversation, I understand. Here's what he had to say about Deborah Bricks. You've heard this one before? Burke says the strain of bird flu is so dangerous no one knows they've got it unless they take one of their moody PCR tests. She says let's test every cow. How about the government that quits making viruses? That's the language of a racist right there, I would say. Not drink milk anymore.
Well, in Idaho, bird flu has been detected in some herds of cattle. Now the FDA wants states to discourage or stop the sale of raw milk because of potential transmission risk. Now the agency urged states to issue more stern warnings.
Got milk? No. Well, you're not going to have any milk either. Now get in your house. You can lick the inside of a mask. Remember how they used to smell? They're pumping this stuff out, aren't they? They're pumping out the propaganda by the gallon already. But the thing is, it's getting too fast. The turnaround's too fast. They only get 1 day now of unbridled propaganda.
Listen up, peeps. On this episode of the Steele podcast featuring Jillian Michaels, the ladies are keeping it real about a whole bunch of stuff. Why Jillian made the move out of crazy California, Ozempic, LGBTQ, Big Pharma, and much more. Hit up the link in the description below for the full context.
You're from California. You live in California.
I moved out.
California got too crazy for me.
Why?
Okay, this is my parting line. I grew up here. I'm a woman. I'm a gay woman. My mom's a Jew. My dad's an Arab. I have a black kid. I hold 1 million cards in your game of woke victimology poker. And when I leave California, maybe you've lost your fucking mind. Just maybe. Like, when you have me running from home, maybe it's gone way too far.
What was the line? Like what was it?
Oh my God,
I guess
girl, there's not
enough.
enough time. I actually take this line from Bill and Elon Musk, and they're like, I actually haven't changed.
Yes.
The world around me is shifting, and I haven't moved. That our passing here are absolutely fucking mind-boggling in relation to crime, protecting our kids. Like, we're decriminalizing everything, which arguably I would probably be okay with, but we're not regulating any of it.
Right.
So it's like, okay, you're going to decriminalize sex work, but only so women can legally loiter on the streets. Like, not to keep them safe, not to have them pay taxes, not to make them, regularly check for STDs, not to take away the pimps out of the equation. It's the like, if you made that argument to me, I'd be like, well, yes, we want, of course. I mean, I could be liberal. I could go there with you. But I grew up this way. But when it's like, oh, and then what we're going to do is we're going to pass a law for LGBTQ rights so that 24-year-old men can sleep with 14-year-old boys and not have to register as a sex offender because it's just not fair to the gays. I'm like, what? Like, are you fucking kidding? Or the fact that a 12-year-old child can be put on off-label cancer drugs to irreparably change their body. But we're not changing your body until it's fully developed. I'm sorry. Conversation's over. You can't get a fucking tattoo.
Exactly.
Are you crazy? It's insane. Like, I just can't. It's madness. It's madness to me. I could go on and on and on, and it's madness.
The only word that I've been able to come up with in thinking about it and reading about it and tweeting about it and saying, don't tweet that, and all of it is evil.
I'm gay, so I get a card, and I can say what I want. I'm like, I don't know. I have a letter in your acronym, so sit down. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
I'm allowed to say, this is batshit. No. A straight person who might turn around and be like, that seems really crazy. Transphobe. And you really also have to look at who's behind it and why.
Well, that's a very, very
look
deep
at
issue.
The pharmaceutical industry
Correct.
and how much they're making on transitioning children. Yeah. And then they weaponize, I swear to God, and this is not, people love to say, oh, tin hat, Jillian claims, Jillian assumes. I do none of that. Do your own homework. I ask you to do your own homework, not to believe me, but to do your own homework. So they weaponize these civil rights groups like the HRC, the Human Rights Campaign, I think it is. You get a score, right? And if hospitals are willing to transition children to get behind it, then you get a low score. It's
the way
really
that they're
diabolical.
incentivizing people to say, yes, 12-year-old, go ahead and make this decision.
And if you don't,
yeah,
you then get labeled.
And then this doctor, assume it was the same person, started to talk about what happens at hospitals. And if someone comes in, a car crash victim who's had their head crushed.
They put it as a COVID
put it
death.
as COVID because they got $40,000 per COVID death patient in every hospital. And I'm like, wait. So once there's a dollar sign attached to anything like this, you must question. And at first, remember, they were fine with any kid under 20. Don't worry about it. No vaccine, they're fine. And then the goalposts kept moving lower and lower. Now it's like, okay, your pre-K kid, you better get it or they're not invited. They can't go to school. Pharma. And it ties into all of this.
Oh my God.
The money, the trans stuff, the money.
All of it ties back.
End of the day, if you look at corporate America and where a lot of this is coming from, that's where it's coming from. It's coming from big food, big farming, big pharma, and Wall Street.
On the latest PBD podcast, Patrick breaks down the buzzworthy headlines of the week. He starts with a viral tweet about LGBTQ holidays and Logan Paul teaming up with Donald Trump on TikTok. Kevin Spacey reveals he's in serious debt while Gen Z's job interview trends raise eyebrows. The American College of Pediatricians condemns child gender transition and Miss Alabama faces controversy. Oprah's health scare and Apple's new AI system make headlines, alongside Hunter Biden's legal troubles and Pelosi's Jan. 6 remarks. Plus, Russian warships in Cuba raise tensions. Get all the details in the link below.
This is something I wrote a couple days ago. The madness with Pride Month has to stop. We have Father's Day one day. We have Mother's Day one day. Yet we have March, Bisexual Health Awareness Month, March 31st. International Transgender Day of Visibility, April 6th. Asexuality Day, first celebrated in 2021, April 26th.
So if you have no clue, April 6th is your day.
Yeah. What happened, Tom?
I said, so if you have no clue, April 6th is your day. So far.
International Lesbian Visibility Day. May 17th, International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia. May 19th, a Gender Pride Day. May 22nd, Harvey Milk Day. May 24th, Pansexual and Panromantic Visibility Day. What the hell does that mean? June, Pride Month, entire month. July 6th, Omnisexual Visibility Day. July 11th through the 17th, specifically 1 week, Non-Binary Awareness Week. July 14th, International Non-Binary Day. July 16th, International Drag Day. August 14th, Gay Uncle Day. Verify this if you think it's a joke.
Gay Uncle.
September 16th through the 22nd, Bisexual Awareness Week. September 23rd, Bisexual Visibility Day. October, LGBT History Month. October 11th, National Coming Out Day. October 20th, International Pronoun Day. Jeez. October 24th, Asexual Awareness Week. November, Trans Awareness Month. November 6th, Transgender Parent Day. November 8th, Intersex Day of Remembrance. November 13th through the 19th, Trans Awareness Week. November 20th, Transgender Day of Remembrance. Are you tired yet? December 8th, Pansexual Pride Day. Folks, it's only June. We still have to go through these days for the rest of the year. 145, roughly, out of 365 days dedicated to LGBTQ. That's 39.7% of the year. Why? How did this make any sense? Meanwhile, we took God out from school. We took prayer out of school. We stopped saying the Pledge of Allegiance in school because that's offensive. Seriously, who's better for a healthy society? Promoting LGBTQ or marriage? Pro-family unit, husband and wives, if this is controversial, America has lost its mind. If the agenda is not to procreate, pushing LGBTQ agenda suppresses that. Gay men cannot procreate, folks. Lesbian couple cannot procreate. No one cares if you're gay, lesbian, trans, or bi. What you choose to do with your body after you're 18 is your choice, and we'll respect it. But this agenda must be accounted for why our national birth rate is the lowest it's ever been. America would be a powerhouse again if we flipped the script, using 145 days to promote the pro-family and give LGBTQ a day out of the year. This is enough that would get us back to 2.5 birth rate and produce a better society. Feel free to tear apart this argument, but if you support it, have the courage to comment and retweet. God bless. May God bless us all. And this thing went all over the place with commentary, agreeing, disagreeing. But you know what it was? 99% of people that read this, they were for it. 99% of people said, this is logical. How do you argue this?
Okay. No, I think it shows exactly what the agenda is. To Marxism, breaking the American family, breaking the unity of the American spirit and the American society, and you just keep coming. That is their strategy here. Keep coming. And you saw how duplicative they were. International Pansexual Awareness Day, International Week of Pansexual Visibility. I don't know what the difference between awareness and visibility are, but you see, they just keep coming, keep coming. This is the strategy, is to overwhelm the society with their agenda and where they want to take it. And this is how they're doing it.
I thought it was a joke when you first started listing them. Like, honestly, especially when you showed it to us. Automatically, the other side is like, oh, you have a phobia. You're scared. You're this. No. What does you being butt naked, okay, sometimes, your ass out twerking in front of kids, just out, what does that have to do with being proud of being gay? Gay people have been through so much to get to where, like, now in society, you're equal, you're chill, you could do whatever the hell anybody else can do. Why do you have to sexualize it in the streets?
Caitlyn Jenner, who's transgender, retweeted, Gays Against Groomers said, we fully support this message.
You don't have to be part of the community or not part of the community or part of the agenda to have common sense.
A few things going on here with Gen Z. 26% of Gen Z applicants, ready? Bring their parents to the job interview. A survey by Resume Templates found that 26% of Gen Z respondents involved their parents in the job interview process, with 31% bringing a parent to an in-person interview, 29% having parents join a virtual interview. Of those with a parent at an in-person interview, 37% had their parent come into the office, and 26% had a parent sit in the room during the interview. In virtual interviews, 71% had their parents off camera, and 29% had their parent visible, with many parents speaking directly.
What? By the way, there's 70 million Gen Z. They're the second largest generation ever. There's 2 million millennials, and the largest generation before that was baby boomers. There were 70 million. So there's a lot of young people. 2 out of every 5 people in America are either a millennial or a Gen Z.
I want to show you the most viral video on Twitter this last week. 177,000 likes. It's got 62,000 reposts, okay? 54.4 million views. The American College of Pediatricians just put out a fire statement calling out all the major medical associations by name for pushing the gender transition craze on kids. They ask for these groups to immediately stop the promotion of social affirmation, puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries for children and adolescents who experience distress over their biological sex.
About the physical and mental health effects of the current protocols promoted for the care of children and adolescents in the United States who express discomfort with their biological sex. This declaration was authored by the American College of Pediatricians, but really it was developed from the expertise of hundreds of doctors, researchers, and other healthcare workers and leaders who, for years, have been sounding the alarm on the harmful protocols that continue to be promoted by the medical organizations in the United States. Despite recent revelations from the leaked WPATH files and the recent release of the final report from the CAS review, these medical organizations have not changed course. So we are calling on these medical organizations of the United States, including the American Academy of Pediatrics, the Endocrine Society, the Pediatric Endocrine Society, the American Medical Association, the American Psychological Association, and the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry to follow the science and their European colleagues and immediately stop the promotion of social affirmation, puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries for children and adolescents who experience distress over their biological sex. In our declaration, we affirm that sex is a dimorphic, innate trait defined in relation to an organism's biological role in reproduction, male and female. This genetic signature is present in every nucleated somatic cell in the body and is not altered by drugs or surgical interventions. Consideration of these innate differences is critical to the practice of good medicine and to the development of sound policy for children and adults alike. Medical decision-making should be based upon an individual's biological sex. It should respect biological reality and the dignity of the person by compassionately addressing the whole person. We are here defying the claims made by these medical organizations in the U.S. that those of us who are concerned are a minority and that their protocols are consensus. They are not consensus, and we are speaking in a loud, unified voice. Enough.
Okay, pull up the clip from Nancy Pelosi.
Her daughter is in the back seat recording all this. And mind you, there's been speculation, like she had two of the same exact conversation. They recorded it. This is all supposed to be like a documentary from her daughter recording, but little did they know that she admits something here at the end of this.
Oopsie.
Oopsie.
We have responsibility, Terry. We did not have any accountability for what was going on there, and we should have. This is ridiculous. You're going to ask me in the middle of the thing when they've already breached the inaugural stuff that should we call the Capitol Police? I mean, the National Guard? Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with?
They thought that they had sufficient resources.
That is not a question of how they had. They don't know. They clearly didn't know, and I take responsibility for not having them just prepared for
This is her responding to the video. Go.
The fact is that the President of the United States, the former president, and his toadies do not want to face the facts. They're trying to do revisionist history on January 6th. But we cannot let us be dragged into their, again, false impression of what happened that day. They know what happened that day.
How big of a deal is this?
On Nancy Pelosi?
Yeah.
This is a pretty big deal. On a 1 to 10, I give it about a 7 because it just shows how much, just like the Steele dossier, just like Russia, that as time goes by, things are leaking out, and the narrative that they tried to pin on Trump isn't pinning. It's coming undone. The thread's coming undone for one simple reason. He was anti-establishment. They are establishment, and they're trying to protect the home field on that. And now you're seeing from Hillary to Pelosi, it's all coming out.
Clip. So Russian warship in Cuba are no threat, U.S. says. Hours ago, U.S. officials have played down Wednesday's arrival of 4 Russian naval vessels in Cuba for military drills. The visit of the vessels, which include a nuclear-powered submarine, not a big deal. I mean, it's just a nuclear-powered submarine and a frigate have been seen as a show of force amid Moscow's tensions with the West over the war in Ukraine. They are anchored at the Havana Bay, some 90 miles from the U.S. state of Florida. We, of course, take it seriously, but these exercises don't pose a threat to the United States. The Russian moves are consistent with the routine naval visits that we've seen under different administrations. Press Secretary Sabrina Singh added. Russia's defense ministry says Admiral Gorshkov frigate and the Kazan submarine are both carriers of advanced weapons, including hypersonic missiles, Zircon. They earlier conducted missile drills in the Atlantic. But Cuba's foreign ministry says none of the vessels have nuclear arms on board, and their 5-day visit does not pose a threat to the region. Now, obviously, we have to sit there and believe that. But that just happened last night, folks, when you were asleep.
This is a show of force by Russia, number one, that they are calling a visit to Cuba. And they are basically, while Biden is president, sailing right on by into Cuba and making their point. We can do whatever we want. This is a result of weak leadership in the United States. And now you have the U.S. government saying, oh, it's no threat. This stuff happens all the time. And they're saying that because they don't want to appear weak. But if you think the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and you think that really the U.S. Intelligence and defense community underneath the covers like this and think this is okay, you're kidding yourself. This is not okay.
On the latest episode of Impulsive with Logan Paul, they bring in none other than former President Donald Trump. They chop it up about potential debates with Joe Biden in 2024, Trump's hefty fundraising despite legal troubles, and even touch on the Paul brothers' sibling rivalry. Trump drops insights on his friendships with world leaders like Putin and Kim Jong-un, weighs in on Logan Paul's beef with Bradley Martin, and gives his unfiltered take on Dana White and Elon Musk. They even dive into Trump's views on aliens and more. For the full scoop, hit the link in the description.
And we had the biggest fundraising, I think, ever for any candidate ever anywhere in the world in the last 8 or 9 days. Hundreds of millions of dollars, but they viewed the case as being so corrupt and so ridiculous. Every one of the legal pundits, they came out and they said, there's not even a case here. There's no case. And when they saw the jury instructions, when they saw all the things that happened, and it's not like anybody's a friend of mine, Mark, they couldn't believe it. So unfair. It's a very unfair thing. But the fundraising numbers went, I don't think there's ever been that much money raised that quickly.
35 million in just hours after the verdict.
Yeah, 58 million within a few hours. And that was in small donations, like $71 something average. We even went to San Francisco. Now, not supposed to be, that's the belly of the beast, right?
Rare visit.
But they had thousands of people on the street. It was so positive, and they raised $12 million. And I think it helps that Biden is just so bad. He is so bad. He is the worst president in the history of our country. So that helps too.
You should make a diss track on him.
Yeah, we'll do something. We'll do something.
I just can't seem to wrap my head around it. Is you got these felony convictions and a lot of them, like more than Al Capone, right? And there was an uprising and people showed you their support with their donations. And a lot of people are saying it points out that actually the unjust nature of America's justice system. So my question is, like, if that is your belief, if that is their belief, why do you have the desire to give your time and energy to a country or a system that's trying to take you down?
The worst border in history, the worst inflation, I think, in history. I think the history of the country, the people are getting decimated by it. All very all something you can fix. You can fix it fast. We were energy independent. We're going to be energy dominant very soon. All these things were happening. And then we had a terrible result in an election. And what happened was disgraceful, and we can't ever let it happen again. But we have a little expression, it's right on that hat, make America great again. And we can do that, make America great again. And this guy is not going to do it. This guy has destroyed our country. When you allow 15, 16, 17, they have no idea what the gotaways. Million people coming out of jails, coming out of mental institutions, insane asylum. The insane asylums all over the world, the mental institutions, they're at the lowest levels. They've been at it for years. They're going to be totally empty. And you have terrorists coming into our country. We're going to be paying a big price, and we're going to solve the problem, and we're going to solve it relatively quickly. But we have other problems too, with energy, with inflation. He's been a disaster as a president. He's the worst president we've ever had. The good news is he makes Jimmy Carter look brilliant by comparison. So Jimmy Carter's the only one that's happy with this. Quickly, we have a debate coming up. That'll be interesting.
June 27th, hosted by one of your favorite television networks, CNN.
Well, they gave me the option. They said, would you do it? And they didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do it. So they gave me everything. Fake tapper. They wanted it to be seated, which I didn't like. I said we should stand, and I think we won that point. But they thought that I wouldn't do it because it's CNN, but I've done plenty of CNN. I did a town hall not so long ago with CNN that worked out well. But I think they'll be fair. I think they're going to try and be fair. I mean, as fair as they can be.
That sentiment that CNN might be fair to you,
they might be,
is a bit of a departure.
I'd
from
say
your
a
normal,
good 10% chance
from your normal hardline stance. Do you think that you're starting to come around or soften your views on some of the networks that you may have not gotten along with in the past?
No, they're fake news.
Yeah, fake news.
No, they're so bad. One of the good terms, right? Fake news. But no, I don't think so. But the ratings for this debate, I guess, will be quite good.
Massive. Are you surprised by his decision to face-to-face with you?
You mean the fact that they're willing to do it?
That Biden's willing
a little
to do
bit. They didn't want to do it. They thought I turned CNN down. Look, CNN is the enemy. When I'm making a speech, so they're waiting for the nomination for months and months. I got it in the quickest fashion. Nobody's ever gotten a nomination so quickly. And I'm making my nomination speech, and they refuse to put it. They're covering it for months and months. Now I'm actually making my speech. I mean, this is the big night. I won the nomination, and they refuse to put it on. These are people that don't like Trump.
Speaking of conflict and fighting, since you left office, the number of global conflicts has skyrocketed. President Biden authorized the use of American weapons in Russia, which has now led to a fleet of Russian warships coming towards Cuba.
Russian attack on Ukraine would have never happened if I were president. Would have never happened. It's just a shame. So many dead people. You look at just the soldiers. It's 500,000 soldiers between the both countries. But so many dead people, so many towns and villages and buildings and magnificent culture just being wiped out. I got along very well with Putin. I got along with Zelensky, but it wouldn't have happened. And October 7th would have never happened. And the withdrawal, the kind of withdrawal, we were getting out of Afghanistan with dignity and strength, but to get out the way, I think it was the most embarrassing day in the history of our country. And I actually think that the way Afghanistan worked, I think that when Putin looked at that, he said, wow, let's go in. And you know who else looked at it? President Xi of China. And he is looking at Taiwan and he's drooling. We've lost a lot of respect. They're laughing at us all over the world. And that wasn't happening 4 years ago.
What's your relationship like with Vladimir Putin?
I think very good, but I was tough with him. I ended the pipeline. He built, it's called Nord Stream 2. Nobody ever heard of Nord Stream 2 until I got involved. And it was the biggest project ever done in Russia. I mean, this was a pipeline that was going to supply oil and gas to all over Europe, Germany in particular. And I said, what are you doing? Why are you doing this to Germany? I said, we're defending you under NATO and you're paying billions of dollars a month to Russia. Yeah, but Putin said to me, it's the biggest thing. You ended it. You ended the pipeline. He said, they all say you and I are friendly, but I'd hate to see you as an enemy. Huh?
You talk to him like that?
Oh, no, I had a very good relationship. That's a good thing, not a bad thing. And I'm trying to tell people, no, it's a good thing. Exact number, but they gave a lot. Just under 2,000 nuclear weapons, and we do also. And when you have nuclear weapons, and even if you don't have nuclear weapons, getting along is good, but be the tough one, be the smart one, get along is good. I tell the press all the time, no, the fact that I get along with Kim Jong-un, North Korea.
That's crazy.
President Xi.
That's crazy.
It's all good stuff getting along, but we took out hundreds of billions of dollars from China, and I still got along with President Xi until COVID. That was a breaking point, but no, but he was a guy that I respected. He liked me, and I liked him. That's a good thing, not a bad thing. The press says, "Oh, isn't it?" You say, "Yeah, he's a leader. He's a smart guy." They say, "Smart man." They say, "Oh, Trump said he was smart." He leads 1.4 billion people. It's a little bit on the smart side, but I got along with him. I got along with Kim Jong-un.
I'm so curious, what this conversation with really powerful world leaders looks like behind closed doors. Is it candid, or do you exercise grace, or you talk like boys?
Everyone's different. No, but everyone's different. It's like when you're talking to people, when you're doing interviews with people, when you're fighting people, they're all different. You fight them a different way. You talk to them a different way. But everyone's different. But I had very good relationships with everyone. The funny thing is I got along with the tough ones much better than I got along with the weak ones. You had some real weak ones, too. I didn't get along with them as well. It's strange. Must be a personality defect.
It's probably a good thing.
Huh?
It's probably a good thing that you get along with
I get along with the
leaders
tough
of the
ones.
largest countries.
There's a very tough one, Viktor Orban, and he's the Prime Minister of Hungary. And he said that the reason the world is blowing up because Trump isn't president. When Trump was there, everybody respected Trump. He said was afraid of Trump. I don't want to use that term because that's, I don't want to say, oh, they were afraid, like a child would say. But they respected me. But he said everyone listened to Trump. They were afraid of Trump. They couldn't figure Trump out, and they all listened. And they did listen. And we had no wars. We had no nothing. I defeated ISIS, got rid of the biggest terrorists ever, maybe, or just about ever. But we defeated, think of that, we knocked out ISIS, 100% of the ISIS caliphate.
I'd like to extend the invite to Joe Biden if he'd like to come on this podcast.
Yeah, I think he should. You know what chance you have of getting him on? I'd say less than 1%, okay? If you did that, it'd be interesting. I'd actually watch that one. Okay, see how long it lasted.
You a fan of Elon Musk?
No, he's he's a spectacular guy.
Well, I mean, between PayPal, Neuralink, Starlink, Tesla, SpaceX,
and other things.
Yeah, no, he's probably one of the greatest minds.
AI.
Right?